Hey everyone,
Hi, everybody.
how are ya?
So, welcome to the first episode of Cockpit Counsel. My name's Tim. I'm the Chief Legal Officer at LinkSquares, and I'm also a pilot. So we decided to put together this theme of webinars. Today is going to be a little bit different, I think, than our normal format. We've got Vishal Sunak here, our CEO, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about our most recent fundraising round. Vishal, why don't you give a little bit of background for everybody, and we can talk through a little bit of overview of the fundraise.
Yeah,
your perspective on it.
Yeah, I would love to. So, story behind LinkSquares. We started out on the journey 2015. A lot of us on the founding team working at a tech company, went through an acquisition. Company that was going to buy us said, "What's inside all your contracts?" We had nothing tracked. It was completely a mess. It was a real light bulb moment for us to then go out and start to ideate around, could we use technology, post-signature? And that's really where the analyzed product came from, and the applied AI use case. So super fun to be on this journey. It'll be 6 years in November. Being able to have this great team, being able to have Tim joining us too as a former customer from DraftKings. So
awesome. So tell me a little bit about how this fundraise is different. Not to try to pat myself on the back here, but maybe I will. Tell me how great I am, Vishal.
Okay, yeah. So let me get into it then in all the detail. This is our fourth round of capital that we raised, and the most significant. And so what I've been thinking about and reflecting on this round is that it was definitely faster on a timeline than like we've ever done before. Thank you, Tim. But also I think it was the longest and hardest diligence exercise with the most amount of items we had to prepare in order to raise the capital. So from my perspective, biggest round, fastest, but also the most amount of work to do. So being prepared and like ready to go was like a big part of why I think it worked out so well and so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really the name of the game is preparation, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get further along today. So let's look at our timeline here. So,
yeah. So I think I break it down into like two phases. Like one is like pre-term sheet. So pre-term sheet, we have my pitch deck. I'm talking to VCs. I'm out there figuring out who's good fits, who's having interest in the business. From there, we set up like a light data room, which was like 15 items, including our pitch deck, historical financials, our current plan, some other kind of deeper analysis on SaaS metrics. And then I think one of the special pieces about raising capital, which usually is really helpful, is that we had 5 supplemental deep dive decks. And those 5 decks covered like go-to-market, machine learning, which we're an AI company, so we have our PhDs put that together. Go-to-market, which is our CRO and CMO, our product and engineering decks, lots of financial decks, which is what we usually prepare anyway. So like that was kind of like the process before we got a term sheet. After the term sheet is really where you and then our CFO Luigi really kind of took over, in my opinion, where you're the ones that kind of pick it up as requests are coming in from our investor pool and our new capital investors coming in. And so the financial and legal diligence and disclosures, and then obviously the negotiation of the docs, which just takes its time. So I really felt that it was amazing partnership with Tim. See, like, look, hey, we're friends. Hey. Amazing partnership with Tim and Luigi, our CFO, if he was sitting right next to me. So March 29th of this year, we started the fundraise process, basically contacting the investors that were on our list and the ones that we've been keeping warm. On April 23rd, we signed the term sheet with Sorensen Capital, and then we were signed and wired the entire $40 million round with all participants, all new capital on June 28th. And then we were able to announce like somewhere like 15 days later in the middle of July to the world. So it was 91 days from the start to cash, and then it was 66 days from term sheet to cash. So it was pretty awesome. It was fun. It was a great exercise for sure.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I think about when we go into a fundraising round is that organization is key. And for those of you who have gone through diligence processes, you see Charlie like this, and from time to time, a diligence process can feel like that if your ducks aren't all in a row. But there are a couple of key things where number one is you have to have a single source of truth. There's so much time is lost when people are looking at shared drive, shared drive folder finance, shared drive folder marketing, shared drive folder whatever, and then saying, all right, is this everything? And then going and tracking down, doing the same thing with, your employee PIIAs and things like that. And so having a single source of truth is absolutely critical. And then actually being able to maintain that as from a counsel perspective is something that actually takes a lot of effort, and it has to be deliberate. I always use the analogy that it's like cleaning your room. The first time you do it, it's terrible, but once your room's clean, you can keep it clean pretty easily with some day-to-day maintenance.
Yeah, and what's cool, what I saw, because this is our fourth round, it's not like I didn't know what investors and what new VCs are going to ask us for. Some of that stuff is just being collected in the background, which is really, really helpful, and like a pro tip to start collecting it all as it's happening versus like running through your email and looking for every single DocuSign you've ever executed from offer letters, which are really impossible to get to and super hard to do, especially when you're on the clock, right? I mean, I think being prepared to raise capital, if you're going to go raise capital, a lot of it has to do with like doing all the work 6 months, 4 months ahead of time, so that when you're supporting your CEO like me, and like we're a LinkSquares is a LinkSquares customer, so like we're in a great spot to begin with, but we can all just go fast, right? I think the one thing you've always told me in all the years that I've known you is that like legal can't be a roadblock. Like you've got to be able to push it through. Like this is your job now, right? And so like third-party paper contracts, material agreements, employee agreements, like all that stuff is so super important, right? To get it done fast, which is what we ultimately all want.
Exactly, and then being able, from a counsel perspective, being able to anticipate, because you're going to have certain things that no matter what the transaction is, whether it's a financing transaction, M&A, people are going to be looking for. And so just keeping those things top of mind, it can save you a ton of time.
Totally. Yeah.
Another interesting part of using LinkSquares at LinkSquares was using the smart values in terms of being able to organize the data room and organize my thoughts around it, and doing so in a very clear way. And a couple of sort of the smart values with the reporting capability, being able to create those custom reports, quickly look through what the content is in your agreements was also huge. And as you're going through different types of documents and saying, is this responsive? Is this considered material? A lot of these smart tags go directly toward what one would consider to be material in the context of finance.
Yeah, I mean, we found the smart tagging and the repository of the automated tags to be really helpful, right? Being able to have all the lists of all the counterparties, and it's pretty consistent so that when we're reconciling a document against, this is a COGS charge, or this is a vendor expense, or this hits new CAC and other calculations, we have it all like double and triple verified, right? And then being able to put your own labels on it. But I love to talk a little bit more about the smart values, right? And so as a company that has two products in market, right? One is pre-signature with Finalize, one is post-signature with Analyze. Analyze is essentially reading the contracts and generating metadata automatically about what you've agreed to, right? And so what were some of the use cases that you looked at in terms of like the smart values output, right?
Biggest one was the follow-up diligence, right? Because usually when you get to the follow-up diligence point, the attorneys have gone through a handful of your documents, if not most of your documents, and are either looking for, let's say, for example, they couldn't find an amendment to an agreement, being able to use the smart tags to pull up related agreements, things like that it was just huge, saved a ton of time. So a lot of times, even companies who are most organized, they don't always link amendments and like different related party agreements in the most efficient way. So like having those smart tags there to help navigate that was absolutely massive. Looking at standard versus non-standard terms, like obviously like our terms of service vary with certain customers, and others they're pretty standardized. So being able to pull out where those deviations are, being able to report on where those deviations are, and say this is material, this is not material, absolutely critical. And then obviously your typical your typical like termination, renewal dates, things like that. And really a lot of this goes into building your disclosure schedules.
Totally. Yeah. And I think like being able to know things like this is a customer contract that's on third-party paper. Right. Like that's so super important. And then being able to say it's not material because we didn't agree to anything that is not standard of how we operate when it's on our paper. Right.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I mean, the smart values continue to grow in length and library and size. Right now we do, I think, over 70 smart values. We can do them in 5 minutes. And it's been exciting to follow that and being able to turn these reports on pretty quickly. Why don't you talk a little bit about like daily maintenance? Like what does daily maintenance look like when we're not raising capital? So
yeah, absolutely. So day-to-day maintenance for me is actually usually something I do weekly, just given our velocity and the focus that I put on it. I block off a little bit of my mornings on Friday to go through and I look at our any new agreements that come in are under the pending agreements tag. So at that point I can go through and I can identify things like whether it's on our paper or someone else's paper, whether it's a click through or whether it's something that was negotiated, whether it's whether it's something that is otherwise related to maybe a name change or something like that. Even is it a vendor agreement versus a customer agreement versus a consulting or a contractor agreement? Setting up those different types and confirming all of those, and then working through from there to try to ultimately try to make sure that locker is as clean as possible. That's really it. But honestly, for me, it's probably about like 2 hours a week that I'll spend at most.
Yeah.
At absolute most, it's usually more like 30 minutes.
So what I find to be interesting is like the role that you had before was like a much bigger legal team, maybe like over 10 people, and now at LinkSquares, given that we're just starting on the journey of building our own in-house legal team, and you're like a team of one now, right?
Right.
And so like how do you think of like Analyze and the use of the Analyze product to be able to kind of like multiplex your efforts? Like what is it doing for you that wouldn't be terribly hard to do as a team of one?
So, I mean, I think it's just understanding what's in the agreements and then being able to create reports from them. Like that's the biggest thing. When you're a team of many and say you're not using Analyze, you just are calling some attorney on your team and saying, hey, I need this information, please get it. And then,
or please maintain it on a weekly basis or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Which usually results in, hey, a month from now, we're probably going to be getting to terms on some new financing. So like wink, wink, nod, nod, get it in order. Right. But with Analyze, it's just easy. It's a lot easier to maintain. Like you look at the way a lot of other people are doing it, and like the idea, and even prior LinkSquares, the way that we manage things at DK, it was a spreadsheet, and needless to say, this spreadsheet was not updated, and I think it's a regular story with most places. So having this tool just brought us a ton of efficiency, and it scaled with the team too.
Right. Yeah. No,
super
totally.
Intuitive and scalable.
Totally.
One of the other things too, like as the team grew, that was really big for me was the reporting.
Yeah.
The reporting is just absolutely huge, and I mean being able to quantify the impact a transaction could have on your revenue. Like for example, if you have restrictions on assignment or you have people who could terminate in the case of change of control or something like that, to be able to run reports and quantify the impact of a potential transaction on the revenue, the bottom line of the business in a quick, efficient way is a huge bit of information.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild because like you started in the company on like March 8th.
Yeah.
And then on the 29th, I started really officially the fundraise process for the B, and that's not a lot of time, right? That's like 20 days of being inside the business, right?
I mean, that's a testament to you guys keeping it up to date. So
Yeah, but that's a testament to like something maintaining it for us, right? Like robotically, automatically, right? And being able to do that. What I really thought was helpful during the fundraise was being able to go and to analyze and run even more specific granular reports, right?
Yep.
Like there was a question on contracts that we signed in 2019 when we were on a different terms of service, and how did that impact the terms of service that we had today? And these are the questions you're going to get, folks. Like if you're raising big capital and bringing on new capital partners, right, and having to work with their outside counsels, which is pretty much the flavor of how the world works, right?
Right.
Being able to like run like a report that we're showing here, where it's like, 2 filters, 3 filters, you're getting very granular, being able to drop in. We did a lot of those exporting directly and then transferring it over. So
yeah, absolutely. And then as you look into like how this process, like, I think in a lot of ways is pretty obvious to any of the lawyers who have been through a process. Like if your house is in order and you can get those pertinent pieces of information quickly, that you're going to accelerate the timeline. But as counsel, like that really is your job. You're here to enable and assist the company in closing that financing. And for anybody who's ever been through any major transaction, that more often than not, time is not your friend.
Time kills all deals all the time, no matter what the deal is, right?
That's right.
We're often reminded of that. And turning around the data room, like how quick did you turn around our big data room?
The initial data room was, it was a Wednesday night where we got the due diligence request list, and it was basically fully populated by, end of the day Friday. Yeah, I think I had like 2 agreements that I was trying to hunt for new employees who had to like just joined, and I got those in Monday morning. So we'll call it like 3 business days.
Yeah, and I think what's great is that you had the confidence that the docs that you were transferring were complete and thorough and encompassing everything that was asked for. I mean, we did, I don't know, 100 question diligence request lists. We're able to populate it in like 3 days. So all this stuff matters, right? You're trying to get a deal done. As Lori is saying from Shark Tank, say yes now, right? That's what we're trying to get people to do.
Yeah, and thinking about it in terms of at least the velocity that we were at DraftKings, like that process of raising so consistently and the hyper growth that we experienced there, like it just became more and more critical that you have a tool that's gonna enable you as a legal function to not fall on your face, right? Because you're the CEO. What would you say if I took 10 days to populate that? Like it probably wouldn't have been a good thing.
I'd be going against Lori's feedback, which is to say, get people to say yes now. But hey, we're catching up. This is our 4th year in a row we raised capital, 17, 18, 19, 20, nice. 21. I think 5th year. So
that's awesome. So I mean, the other thing too is that with like follow up diligence requests, like being able to get there and turn those around in less than, usually in a matter of an hour or 2, depending on how extensive it is. But that is also key, because what a lot of times you'll see happen is people send over diligence requests and the law firm will be like, okay, we're moving on to another matter for the day, because they don't expect anybody to actually get back to them in time. And so when you bounce it back, like they're throwing something against a rubber wall, like it forces them to move a little bit faster too.
Yeah, and I thought we could measure the results of how our diligence was going as people were asking me and our existing investors, like, how's it all going? Like, well, we don't hear a lot back from their outside counsel. Right. We don't hear back at all. It seems like they're in the data room and accessing docs and doing bulk downloads, and there's very little follow-up questions, right? And I think as you're rating yourselves, as you're positioning yourselves in the future, like those are the best scenarios. Because it's really like everything is a boomerang. Like we get a request and the answer goes back out, and a lot of it is being driven by having fingertip information, right, available for us to go forward and work with. So
that's right. And a lot of it has to do too with like a level of precision and accuracy. Like it just from like counsel perspective, if you have your data room in order, if you have it complete and it really is a crisp data room, you pay attention to those details, then the attorneys on the other side will recognize, be like, all right, this is like a really clean data room. And it kind of, it sets a different tone for the conversation. Right. And that was something that
versus like things are a mess, then they're skeptical, then they're double clicking in everywhere.
Yeah, you know, like, I don't know if it is, like, it just, it's a can of worms. And usually it means for lawyers who work on build hours, they're pretty happy with what they're going to do for that 2-month period. So
sounds like my seed financing, you know, back in the day, the early days.
So, I mean, so here we are, 40 million, Vishal.
I know, feels great.
Absolutely great.
Feels great. How do you what tips do you have for people, whether you're a customer or not? Like, what are the insider tips from Tim on how to make financings faster?
The biggest thing, preparation is key, right? If you're not prepared, then you are going to have either you're going to have an extremely far reaching range of time that's going to take you to actually get your documents in, or it's going to be unorganized. As I said, like both scenarios are bad scenarios. And so making sure that you're anticipating what's going to be there, making sure that as you're working with the organization in preparation for a financing, you are, if you do have files scattered everywhere, go and gather them. Like, even if you're not anticipating a financing as counsel, it's something you should know.
Yeah.
Like, you absolutely should know the agreements that your company have entered into. And so that's, I just can't emphasize that preparation enough.
Yeah, I would follow up behind that and say that, like, depending on where you're joining the company's journey, like, you could be the 7th employee, or you can be the 70th employee, or you could be the 700th employee. Like, there's a lot of like institutional knowledge that like bounces around companies. Yeah. Like, the institutional knowledge started with like Chris and I, my co-founder. That's and right. Like, we used to negotiate all the deals, and we used to work with our outside counsel, and then it's like, then you show up and then I have to give you all this institutional knowledge, but it's so hard to transfer it to you. Yeah. Right? It's so hard to transfer it to you without like a centralized repository, or a way we've been tracking data, or setting you up for success. Ultimately, if I can't set you up for success and you were 20 days in the company and I'm like, hey, we're going to go raise this big round of capital because I think it's the right move for us. Right. And you agreed and you're like, great, I'm all in. And yeah. So it's like, without the knowledge transfer, I don't think it can be, I don't think it can work. I think having like dashboards, like this is an analyzed dashboard that every customer gets, right? Being able to see holistically from the top level, being able to see where there's weakness or areas you're going to have to address.
And particularly as you're looking at like maybe general counsel with the staff, that's where your dashboards are critical, because a lot of that role is communicating to the rest of the C-suite and being able to do so in a sophisticated way that contextualizes and visualizes you know, the different points that you're trying to make, and communicating some of the risk factors of the deal, or some of the, you know, maybe hidden advantages of the deal.
Yeah, all the other departments have these great dashboards. Where's legal's dashboards, right? You know, in the fancy board deck presentations.
Yeah, it's usually like 4 bullet points. It says
we're not getting. I was going to say the opposite. I was going to say the opposite. We are not getting sued actively.
We are anticipating 10 lawsuits before.
Your DraftKings days are catching up with you.
So. Yeah, so it's been absolutely awesome to really like see the efficiency with which LinkSquares has been. Like, I felt like I was just holding on for the ride, and the LinkSquares machine was going. So it's just awesome. So
that's great. That's awesome. We're done with like the content. It's a fun conversational style, right? We're going to take a look at some of the questions that have been asked here, and drop a couple of pearls of wisdom for everyone. All right, so here's a couple of questions. Tim, what's the best advice for a company fundraising without an in-house counsel? What do you say? I got my thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, without an in-house attorney, I think there are a couple of things that still hold true. Number one is making sure that you're organized. Right, and I think this may fall a lot of times to a CFO for, you know, a lot of early stage companies, making sure you're organized and, you know, keeping things like keeping things in a central repository, making sure you're able to like gather everything and produce it in connection with the data room and diligence requests. Like that's absolutely it. And that's like, you know, that's also where Analyze can be super helpful. It's not like it's a tool that is designed for lawyers and helps lawyers work the way that lawyers work, but at the same time, it's intuitive enough where literally anybody can use it.
Right. When you were thinking about taking another role outside of DK, or you're giving advice to people to join like earlier stage companies, like what are the sort of things that you would give them advice on, what to look for?
What to look for in
a company, in a place to work, in the next move for their career?
I would say identify what you're really good at and identify what you like to do, and hopefully those two things line up. And so if you could find a place that's really looking for that, you know, I also think it depends on where you are in your career, right? Like if you know, I would advocate for taking a little bit of time off if you can, and really sitting down and saying, what do I want to do with my career? And you look at that company and say, what is this company specifically going to do for my career? So there's like the days of working for 25, 30 years and getting a gold watch at the end of the day are done, right? You're really trying to figure out what's my next step, what's my ultimate career goal, and you try to find something that aligns with that. And a lot of it is, you know, some of it can be industry, right? Up until, you know, March, I've been in gaming my entire career, and you know, part of me really loved gaming, but part of me really was excited to get out. Yeah. And so, you know, this was also like a really natural move for me to move into an industry that I felt like I knew a little bit about, or at least knew the problems. As you know, as a customer, you know the problems, and so you know, sort of as my first foray outside of gambling, getting into the legal tech area was something I was really.
Great. Another question here. What are some of the tips about working well together, CLO and CEO?
Is communication.
Yeah.
Communication and being like, you tell me, but I think being on the same page as to what the expectations are in terms of, you know, in terms of like the CEO's expectation of the GC or the CLO. Like Vishal, if I were just sitting here pointing out risk and trying to avoid risk, you probably wouldn't be too happy with me. Like one of the things that you told me is you want me to help to drive the business using the legal function.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, your job is to pinpoint and identify opportunities and risks as we're making different moves and decisions, and even all the way from the NDAs we sign and what that means, and all the way to customer agreements, all the way to financings, right? And so I think the strongest partnership between the legal function, the head of the legal function, and the CEO is really understanding that like we're all on one management team together, trying to do the same things, trying to achieve the same things for the business, coming at it from different angles, right?
Yep.
Whether you're building product or selling it or marketing it or doing the finance or doing the legal, like we all got to enable it to occur, right? And then trust each other that when you say we can't do something, we got to find another way. So
good. And a question that I have for you is, you know, I've been perpetually impressed with the team that you put together here. What are some of the traits that you look for? And this, you know, this is not just in a GC, but like in all of your leadership roles. Like if you could find some common threads that are really critical to you, what would those things be?
Yeah, pretty easy. I think it's people who value putting the team first and foremost. Like without employees, without motivated people who want to help and work and make it through tough times, we're not really going to get very far. Being inspired by our customers, right? Being obsessed with their successes, right? Being focused on how we can make that possible. Being highly accountable, right? Highly accountable and saying, hey, I got this. I'm going to go do this thing, and I'm going to deliver it on time, just like I said I would. And then really being like all in.
Right.
Like being all in is so super important, right?
Yeah.
Like we all can spend time working anywhere, any company. I can throw a stone right now in downtown Boston and hit 500 tech companies, but everyone's making a conscious choice to like work here, right? So in order to do that, we all got to be all in on what that means to get through hard times, push through, put in a little extra hours if we're doing something big, or have each other's back, right? That's what like the 4 big things I look for, right? Yeah. And then people who are experts, especially if you work for the CEO, which is easy enough to do.
And I think a follow-up question on that might be interesting for the folks on the call, maybe who haven't gone through the full sort of pitch process and seen it. What if you had to pick 1, 2, 3 things that that most people wouldn't know about fundraising, and what happens from a CEO's perspective, and sort of some of the stresses, challenges, successes that are not readily apparent? What would you say those are?
I'd say that VCs will look at a seed fund will look at 1,000 deals a year, depending on how large the fund is, maybe write 10 checks. Right. And like just understanding that like Series A is the hardest round for a company to raise. There's a lot of companies that raise seeds but don't raise their Series A, so like the risk of like failure on the A is actually quite high. Yeah. The B, the averages get better as companies are getting more mature, but you're basically looking at 1%.
Right.
You got to be like a 1% type of company. Right? I think a lot of people have misconception because they see so much of it going on, like TechCrunch and Forbes and Inc. And I read on this company, oh, this company raised this and that. The reality is, it's like my Series A investors did, I don't know, 15 deals that year and looked at 3,000 companies.
Right.
Like it's 15 over 3,000, right? And there's a lot of no's.
Yeah.
And so like that's one thing, is just like setting the expectation, depending on how much you're going to raise and where you're trying to go. And you know, first of all, spend time with people who are like, if you're a consumer packaged good company or you're a B2B software, like don't spend time with investors who are like, oh, we only invest in direct to consumer businesses, but you're a B2B software company. Like you got to flush all that out, right? You got to flush all that out and target the right people. Yeah. Try to build a big working list, right? You're gonna need to keep like what I call a keep warm list, like people that get updates. Like you go out to San Francisco, like I go meet with 10 investors, like I don't know whether they'll raise the round, but it's better than being like, hey, I just met you, and do you want to do a $100 million financing tomorrow? Like it's not gonna happen. Like like the 90-day fiance is a lot harder to pull off. Right. Than being like, oh, we're consistently talking to each other. You're consistently learning more about me. I'm learning about you, right? Yeah. One of the big pieces I think is that like you're gonna get someone on your board who's probably gonna be a director. They're really hard to take off. Yep. And at some fundamental level, like you have to really enjoy this human being that is gonna join you on this journey. And if you're the CEO, they're technically your boss, right? Right. And so it's like making smart decisions about like, yes, valuation's like really important. Right. Yes, the terms of the deal like really important. Right. But like the person that you're interacting with, you have to know that this person may ride with you for 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 15 years, right? Right. However long the journey is until whenever your exit is reality, right? So I think that's really important. I mean, we love the folks at Sorensen Capital. It's been so amazing to work with. I highly recommend them to anyone. They've just been great to work with. And then that kind of leads you down, like during your fundraise with a new lead, you're gonna grind metal on a whole bunch of topics. Right. And you're gonna have your opinion, they're gonna have their opinions, and that's the first test of this new marriage that you're trying to get into. It's like, how do you get through those issues when you're negotiating deal docs, or price, or round size, or like, what's the dilution going to be for the whole employee base? Like, why do we care about that? Like, what am I trying to solve for? Like, what are you trying to solve for? Where are the overreaches from VCs, like into the operating plan, where it's like, hey, no, like this is my line. I have everything below this, right? Right. And then, you know, it's like, it's fun and it's hard and it's rewarding and it's great. But it takes a lot of time, right? There's a big personal commitment. I think people who have never done it don't really know that it's like, we pitched like 40 funds and like they all will send us diligence. And the more you can like standardize and create a universal path, like everyone gets the light data room to start. Right. And if you want to turn the next card over in the process, then you go through the data room and you ask me questions. Right. And then I usually have supplemental information I can give you. Right. It's like trying to getting everyone into like the same funnel
Right.
of like everyone is in the same funnel and they're all in the same funnel together, right? So raising capital is wild. And then after you sign a term sheet, like the work's not even done yet, then you got to get through all the diligence.
Yeah.
Which takes another, 30, 45 days of working really hard, and then it's over.
Yeah.
And it's over, and hopefully you got the deal you wanted with the people you wanted, with the cash, and the company can keep going, and keep growing.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So let's see if we have any other questions. Let's see. One more interesting one. Have you ever taken Vishal up in your plane?
We got to do it.
Not yet.
We got to do it.
But
yeah.
We're gonna go. We'll go like in the next couple weeks. we should probably get some ridiculous pictures and put them on.
Yeah. We'll have another picture like this. Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah, that's it. That's it for the webinar. Thank you all for coming and hanging out with us. Awesome to be able to share this story, talk a little bit about what we're doing. If you're ever interested in chatting about LinkSquares, you know where to find us, linksquares.com. So,
Vishal, thanks for joining today, and really looking forward to kicking off this. This is a great kickoff of the series. Really getting forward to kicking.
Yeah, Cockpit Counsel.
It's
100 more episodes coming your way.
It's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be fun. So, all right.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.
Take care.